By the time you're watching this, Season 1 of Limbus Company should be either done or very soon. And I figured this would be a good time to kind of take stock and do kind of a Season 1 review of what are my thoughts of the game and what would I like to see going forward with it. The footage that you're going to be seeing throughout this video is just going to be stock B-roll, nothing too out of the ordinary, maybe some summons here and there. But I can't believe it's only been about 3 months since Limbus Company was released, and what a journey it has been. I was really looking forward to this game, being a huge Project Moon fan. I have True Ending, Limbus Corporation, and Library of Ruina. And Day 49 of Limbus Corporation still haunts my waking dreams there. I've been looking for another kind of high-quality gacha-style game to play besides Arknights, and Limbus Company has certainly been fitting that bill. The music and story continue to be the highlights of the game, with, of course, the gameplay we'll talk about in a few minutes. As I've said, I'm a huge fan of the storytelling, and Project Moon has done a really great job of giving us another group of characters to care about, learn about, and, of course, theory craft as to what the heck is going on. One thing that I really like that they've done is that over the course of the kind of quote-unquote dead weeks that have been in May, they've been teasing kind of major reveals and story about what's going to happen in Chapter 4. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to seeing where things will go. The first 3 chapters have been a very interesting introduction to Limbus Company, and for people who aren't familiar with Project Moon, to their style. As everyone knows how happy the ending of Chapter 1 was. To start with kind of talking more about the gameplay, it is definitely a fantastic, I think, start to this design, and I'll kind of expand with more of those thoughts later on in this video. From a gacha or monetization standpoint, I did my monetization review of the game way back in, I believe it was February or early March. I'll include a link to that in the notes down below. But the game has been probably one of the most fairest ones I think I've seen, and easily the best battle pass or season pass I think of any live service game I've played to date. Just buying the $10 battle pass, I think I've gotten way more value than I think even that $10 could provide, even more than some of the bundles that are available. With more of the gameplay itself, I know a lot of people have been hoping for more control over combat for the humanoid fights and seeing more complexity, like with the abnormalities. For me, I think the game has a healthy mix at the moment. The different modes that were added post-launch, including the revisions of the Mirror Dungeon and the Luxcavation mode to get your daily threads and bonus experience rewards, have been really well done and I think accepted popularly or positively by the community. I do appreciate that this is probably the most low daily engagement mobile live service game I've played. I know some people have argued that they would like to see more requirements or more things to do daily, but I do really like the fact that the game is positioned solidly as kind of like a secondary or side game. That you don't need to commit a lot of time, even doing things daily. When there's no events, nothing to do, I think I logged on a sum total of a minute and a half one day to do all my daily stuff, get out of the way, go on to the next thing. It's a really great example of, I think, Project Moon trying to do things differently with their live service, and again with a mobile gacha game than other developers. I think anyone can probably attest to the sheer number of free stuff they've given out, sometimes due to just supporting the fan base, and a lot of times when people find bugs, issues, and other stuff. And this is probably the only game we've seen where fans are excited to find bugs, because it means we get compensation for them once they're squashed. Now, with that said, however, there are a few issues with the game I think we can all agree on. So the first one, the technical side. The phone version of the game hasn't, I think, really worked as well for everyone. I know my phone still struggles to play with it. It has been, silky and super smooth on the PC, But when you're trying to position this game for a mobile audience, making sure that the mobile port works is kind of very important. Now, the more pressing matter is definitely the lack of content. I do really like when we had the refraction line challenge. I really love when games have these kinds of more escalating challenges that reward proper play rather than just someone spending the most money. Kind of like the stuff that we see with the advanced events and additional modes in Arknights. I got my 116 banner, and that took a lot of work and hair pulling to get it done. I would, and I think we all agree, we would like to see more content, and I think more specifically, more modes of things to do. Not so much stuff that has to be done daily. The Hell's Chicken daily grind was certainly, I think, too extreme for a game like this, and I'm hoping that they've learned that people want more qualitative events rather than quantitative. The content here, in terms of its gameplay, I think certainly opens itself up for more interesting stuff. Again, for fans of Lobotomy Corporation and Library Runa, we all know that these developers can make some very challenging stuff. And if anyone thought the Chromor fight or the final challenges in the refraction line are like the heights of what they can do, well, I'm pretty sure we got like a White Knight or Apocalypse Bird at some point in this game. But all in all, I think this is a fantastic game, and the first season, again, over 3 months, the game has certainly grown, not so much in terms of adding more content, even though we've talked about here, but just in terms of improving the basic elements, the quality of life, and again, the daily play. So with that said, however, the main part of this video that I want to kind of theory craft on is I want to talk about what the future could hold for this game, and I have 3 kind of, I guess, like, good feelings about where this game is going to go in the next year, and I'm really curious what fans will think of them. But we'll talk about that after a quick break. And if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. So it's time for the part of the video that I think is going to be where we'll spend the most of our discussion on. Where could this game go in the future? Again, the developers have on Twitter and on the main site, of course, a roadmap for content for the rest of this year. But as I'm sure we all know, they must be cooking up some very interesting things, Hell's Chicken pun notwithstanding. And I have kind of 3 theory crafts of things that I feel like is going to happen to this game. Not definitely in Season 2, I'm talking maybe by the end of this year or maybe even into the next year. And I'm curious again what people think about that. So we're going to go in order of probably the easiest to happen to the hardest. So number 1, I definitely think we're going to see the party limit go up. Right now we're locked to, of course, having 5 characters. And while that has worked so far, with a game like this, and especially a kind of gacha style game where it's all about team compositions and using all those fancy 3 stars and URs and whatever designation you want to really show that off. And I'm pretty much like 99% sure that they're going to expand the number of playable characters. I would say definitely to 6. I would honestly like to see maybe 7 or 8. And who knows, maybe someday we'll get the entire roster. But at least within the next year, I do feel like they're going to expand things out. Part of me thinks the reason why we haven't seen that happen just yet is that it will probably cause a few phones to explode. I know for me that I've noticed that the performance of the game really takes a hit when I have all 5 party members in the mirror dungeon, but works pretty much perfectly when I'm down to 3 or 4. And I'm hoping that's not just performance issues, but it will be interesting to see how this will relate to the game, and more importantly, how this will relate to the different character designs and future banners. Speaking of, the second point, and I think this is going to probably be the biggie, or one of them, I don't think 3-star is going to be the top quality or the top banner quality forever in this game. And I do feel like we're going to get to that point where there will be a 4-star or super limited, I guess, rarity tier. And I have several reasons why that I've been thinking about. One of the challenges I think Limbus Company has compared to other gacha style games is that there's not enough differentiation, I feel, between the different tiers. And with only having 3 tiers, it means that a lot of characters are all being lumped into the 3-star variety. And while this has certainly worked for the first season, and I'm going to assume for the second one as well, it's going to reach a point kind of similar to that of Arknights, where there's so many characters all belong to the same star level and to the same class, that it's going to start to feel like everybody's kind of stepping on each other's toes. Why should I try, 15 different varieties of 3-star Gregor if there's only 2 or 3 that everyone agrees are the best? And the problem with having 3 different tiers is the very fact that the kind of power differentiation going from 1 to 2-star and then 2 to 3 is kept very narrow in this game. Again, at the moment, the max level is still at 30. And before anyone leaves a comment down below, as I was writing and delivering the first version of this video, Project Moon announced on Twitter that one of the changes coming to Season 2 is raising the level cap to 35 and the thread spinning rank from 3 to 4. And that kind of threw this whole part into like a weird place, because now I'm not so sure how they're going to really incentivize going from rank 3 to rank 4. And more importantly, will there be even more rank ups in the future? And again, how will this differentiate going between them? Right now, of course, going from rank 2 to rank 3 for an identity means that you unlock the identity's third and, of course, most powerful skill, and unlocking their passive. So if this does mean that there will be kind of a revision of identities going forward, then it's going to be very curious, or I'm going to be very curious to see where this is going to go progression-wise, and how will this relate to the 1-star and 2-star identities as well. The one thing that I do feel for sure is that at some point, we are probably going to get like a 4-star kind of tier. And this is, again, one of those things I'm curious for fans watching, and of course everyone playing Limbus Company, what you think about this. Because as we all know, from a lore standpoint, all the characters who've been introduced so far, all the different varieties, have been kind of lower tier stuff. And I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking this, but I definitely want to see like color versions of some of the characters, because that was of course heavily implied reading Leviathan. And when you have something that powerful, it only stands to reason to introduce it as a new tier. If we're talking about like an Arknights version, this would be like the altered characters, or with other games, this could be like a super rare tier that's not used often. And that, I think, will have to happen if this game is going to keep growing and adding in more characters. Because even though I've said that the game features 3 rarities, technically it only features 2, because we all get the 1-star varieties for free. And there's not enough mechanisms in the game at the moment to really differentiate, all the 2 stars from all the 3 stars, and then all the 3 stars from all the other 3 stars. While it's still early, I guess, quote unquote, in this game's life, I do want to see, I think, at least one more rarity tier. I don't know at the moment if we'll see more than that. I feel like in games like this, you need to be really, really careful as to adding in new tiers and, of course, new monetization, because that can easily backfire on any game. And For a game like Limbus Company, if they ever do something like that, it has to be like a very rare occasion. Kind of like how Arknights has a limited banner, usually I think it's like, every 6 months or so? Probably even longer than that for a game like Limbus Company. Now, the other point about the combat and the different characters and, party size, it takes me to the third point. And if you thought that the second one was kind of really, reaching for the stars, then this one could be even higher. For my third kind of prediction about where Limbus Company is going to go, I think we are going to see a redesigned combat system at some point. Now, this is definitely something that's not going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. It may not even happen for the next year or so. But there's a part of me that thinks, and this kind of goes back to the previous 2 points, that one of the issues Limbus Company has from a design perspective, it really is kind of limited in terms of its growth at the moment. Again, with the smaller party sizes, with only having 2 different rarity tiers to gacha for. And I think as we've been playing this game, or as I've been playing it, it doesn't seem like there's as much room to develop new and interesting strategies, given the combat system as it is. At the end of Season 1, probably the biggest change we got was N-Corp Sinclair as being the first personality or first identity to require negative sanity. And I think we can all agree that there's going to probably be more identities that go that route. But again, the question remains, where else can they actually push the individual mechanics, given the system as it is right now? Defense and defensive options in this game are woefully lacking in terms of their design and practicality. The only times you really want to use a defense is if this character has no hope whatsoever of surviving a clash. But in any other situation, you still want to at least attack an enemy. Even if the attack is going to only be like 1 to 2 points, you can still apply stats, debuffs, you can affect the stagger bar. And to go back to my second point about introducing a higher rarity tier or more powerful characters, my concern is how? How can they implement new characters, new mechanics, new things that generally give the game a different sense of gameplay or gameplay growth, given what we have right here? As we've seen, especially if you've played Library of Ruina, there is a lot of complexity and a lot of things were changed as the game grew. And I feel like with this, there is certainly room, but it's going to take a lot more added to it. Limbus Company, I think, lacks, when we look at a game like an Arknights, or with something like a Genshin or Honkai Rail, where the basic elements are there for an almost like infinite expansion of a new character, having a new power, or a new reason to gacha. The fear of this one, especially after playing Season 1, is that it's going to become harder and harder to incentivize people to spend or go after these characters. For myself, just by buying the Battle Pass, I have a full roster of, I think, literally all the best 3-star characters in the game right now. I mean, at this point, unless they start introducing enemy types that just flat out punish, like entire enemy groups like Cromer, I'm not really seeing the reason to really pull on these banners. Again, we can argue, hey, this is a better version of this character, or this character offers, flame damage versus a tremor, or whatever. But once you have a full roster of characters, again, given the limited number you can bring into a battle, and given, again, how much of a disparity there is between the bad, good, and amazing versions, where is that incentive, other than, of course, the obvious one, for collectible purposes? Even with those points, I'm still really looking forward to Limbus Company. I can tell you, guarantee, on June 1st, when the Battle Pass Season 2 is, I'm hoping, to be released, I'm buying that thing day one. Because if it's anything like the first one, I am going to get my money's worth and more out of it over the next however long Season 2 is going to be, because again, things can certainly change. That's going to do it for this kind of review slash recap of Limbus Company Season 1. Again, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Maybe someday I'll have the opportunity to interview Project Moon, as there are so many things I would love to talk to them about in terms of their design and storytelling. With that said, thank you for tuning in. Do all the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. I will look forward to chatting with everyone and doing more pools and gameplay in Season 2. Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.